serious Redditors who grew up in abusive, physical, emotional, sexual, etc. households. What is your story? My dad is an emotionally and physically abusive piece of shit. I've seen him beating my mom multiple times. They finally divorced when I was 8. My mom went back to school and got her nursing degree, and we were better off than we ever were with my dad in the picture. I'm the first person in my family to graduate with a bachelor's degree, 2 of them, and I went on to get 2 master's degrees. Now I work in child protective services, and I try to keep assholes like my dad from beating their kids and wives. Congratulations on your success and recovery. I know breaking the cycle is not an easy task at hand. Thus I'm proud of you for what you've achieved and accomplished in life. I'm also proud of the fact that you're now protecting other children, being the overseer and protector that we ourselves needed as children from our own fates. Thank you. Was ducked by my uncles and step-grandpa on my father's side. My dad gave up his custody of me cause he couldn't keep me safe. I'm doing good now. Haven't seen him since I was 8 years old. I'm 35 now. My dad gave up his custody of me cause he couldn't keep me safe. So it seems you were not in a conflict with your dad. Have you ever tried to contact him again, or did he? I did when I was 8. I spent the whole summer with him and his new family. I spent the whole summer with my stepmom's brother. My mum was a psycho, bipolar and narcissistic, violent and aggressive. She hurt me for many years physically, but especially mentally. She made afraid of her. I grew up thinking I was a bad girl and she was hurting because of me. Lot of traumatizing experiences. Could write a book. I had to end our relationship back in 2006 to save my life. I'm a broken soul today. I'm successful and built myself up to a good person with a real honesty and clarity about all the shit I have in my mind now. But I'm broken. I have severe anxiety, few OCD and ED, and don't seem to ever feel in peace. I'm in therapy now and trying my best to heal. I've never looked back to her. She put her own shit onto me and it's not fair. I literally saved my life when I left her behind. Parents are not always the best humans we can keep around, unfortunately. Maybe you are broken, but remember, a broken crayon can still color. You can still live life to its fullest if you have the mentality that you can. It will take a while to get better, but I have faith in you. I wish you the very best and lots of love. Random internet stranger. A broken crayon can still color. This makes me happy. When I was a teenager, my mum became suicidal. We would get picked up after school to my dad nervously explaining that he found her with her wrists cut, or that she had been trying to hang herself. Every few months for years, we waited on her hand and foot more or less, as she claimed to have chronic fatigue. She told us she had gotten better. Randomly one night after my mum went to visit a friend, I get a phone call. It's my mum. She tells me in this weird voice that she loves me so much. I ask where she is, and she says she isn't going to tell me that, but that she has taken a lot of pills and this is her goodbye. Instantly in a panic, I was 15 I believe, I run downstairs shouting to my dad and brother. My dad tells me to give him the phone and she says she will only speak to me, groggily telling me how sorry she is, etc. I have no idea how long that call was, but I had to beg and plead with her non-stop as she was drifting off to tell me where she was. I guess right toward the end she realized she didn't actually want to die, or I made her feel bad enough about it that she started telling me small details about where she is. Turns out she got a ferry to an island on the other side of Ireland that she had visited as a kid. My dad called the local police there and gave whatever directions I could get out of her while screaming at her to stay awake. We got her back, checked her into a psychiatric ward, where she fell in love with a girl in there too, and both of them moved to France together immediately on being released. My dad and brother resented me for it, assuming I must have IDK encouraged her or something. Brother told me if I didn't support dad then I wasn't his brother. I lived in that environment for a few years till I moved out for college. My mum has spent the rest of her life being an emotionally manipulative piece of shit and trying to get me to pretend none of this happened. I tried to approach it directly before, and she burst into tears saying, "Won't you ever stop throwing that in my face?" despite my having never mentioned it till that point. I've tried many times, I'm over 30 now, to try find some kind of functional relationship there. or even just to learn to forgive her, but every single time it just fills me with absolute ducking fury knowing the shit she has done to me and my dad and brother. You write beautifully. Thanks for that. Kept what happened with my mum to myself until I finally chatted to a professional about it a year or two back. Surprised how easy it felt to type it out in a public forum at this stage. The sexual abuse started before I was old enough to talk about it, and I kept it with me until I was in first grade. I was physically and mentally abused by the majority of my family, especially my immediate family. This went on until I was in my early 20s. I have recovered mostly from this, although I struggle with dissociation. The real kicker is that my uncle is a psychopath and I cannot get away from the memories that still haunt me. I can't unsee the vile things he showed me. I can't erase the disgusting shit he said. My therapist said has different than everyone else, because while they really hurt me, he tormented me, and while they bruised my skin, he left handprints on my soul. I have nightmares about him to this day. I'm afraid he could find me, and I have no idea where he is. I made a post about him once, and removed it, because I didn't want to risk the chance that he might see it. I often shake the memories from my head, as if they'll fall out of my ears. His eyes would bug from his head, and it felt like he was glaring right through you. He had complete control. There was no other choice but to listen to him. I don't know if I will ever heal from the harm he caused. Thinking about it makes my stomach slosh with dread. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that he would kill someone if he hasn't already. I'm so sorry. I hope things get better for you and you stop living with this fear your whole life. I was emotionally neglected more than abused. I pretty much keep it under wraps. The few people I've told have been sympathetic, but you can see in their eyes they are thinking that it doesn't sound that bad. But always being the one left out, the one not thought of, the one forgotten. Always being the one who's wrong in every argument. Never once being a priority. It ducks with the mind. I don't blame people for not getting why it was so bad. Any one incident isn't that big a deal. It's not that big a deal that everyone made an effort to go to my brother's soccer game, but ignored my karate test to move up in rank. It's not that big a deal that my twin brother got what he wanted for his birthday, and I got a shirt he'd never wear because no one bothered to ask for a list. It's not that big a deal that my dad would never accept that I might know what I'm talking about, but living it every single day was hell. The cumulative effect was hell. There's something really insidious about emotional neglect. There's a missing part of you. I understand what you are describing. Any one incident or description of an incident will seem, well, incidental. But the pattern of never having your emotions validated or feelings heard is functionally identical to trauma. There's a missing part of you. Bingo. I grew up with a hearing loss and missed out on most social aspects of childhood. I could play tag in or with the other kids, but once the game was over, they'd separate into groups of friends. But I was incompatible with every group. Oh well. Stepfather drank a lot and threatened to kill us multiple times. One time chasing my mum and sister down the hall with a knife, and another time telling us he'd break our necks if we ran downstairs and tried to escape the house. My mum abandoned the house a few hours before to go duck off round her friend's house after they had a fight. Dad asked me and my sister if everything was okay at that house, and we downplayed it until now, and he feels so bad that he didn't know, but we are going to talk about it more when lockdown's over. He's ex-military, so he also used to demonstrate on me constantly how to slit people's throats using his tobacco-stained finger, and I can still ducking feel it today. I have extremely severe harm OCD, which the doctor said the violence and abuse was the cause, but my mum gaslights me and blames my harm OCD on my current girlfriend for some ducking reason. I was never touched or beaten, but the mental scarring of all of that shit he did has ducked me up for life now. Now, I know what that is like. My dad is an angry man. That's about it. He's alone now and coming to terms that he will die alone. I learned what not to do as a husband and a dad. Him not perfect, but him doing better than he ever did. Thanks to my mom. I think I came out okay. I seem to have a lot less serious issues than my siblings. His childhood was terrible and abusive as well. so I don't blame him entirely for his behavior. That being said, I don't want a relationship with him. To acquaintances and strangers, my dad seems like this hilarious, charming, intelligent guy. Lots of "oh man, your dad is hilarious / great / amazing ha 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 lol." I just go along with it. It sounds like our dads are the same. Luckily, mine has mellowed out a shit ton, but going home still stresses me out so much, and I have a whole complex about angry men now. Even if I just perceive them as angry, it sets off a full fight, flight, freeze response. In comparison to others I see here, I guess mine is not as bad. My father was physically and emotionally abusive to us kids and, as I found out later, sexually abusive to my mother. My father was a high-functioning alcoholic, had serious issues based around his sexuality, and it led to numerous instances of adultery. My parents would argue almost every single night, most of the time directly in front of my sister, which usually led her to come sleep in my room. These arguments would usually entail my father degrading my mother and coming dangerously close to physical altercation. I spent many nights long after my siblings went to sleep waiting outside their door to break in should I hear the wrong thing. My father had relationships with 3 other women while married to my mother that I know of, one of which we found out about while he was in the hospital from a stroke. He had been drinking excessively with medications he was expressly not to drink, while taking in addition to drinking a lot of energy drinks. On Christmas Eve he had his stroke and was millimeters from death. When he got to the hospital, his mistress had the audacity to call my mother while she was making decisions about his care to ask if he was okay. His parents, when they found out she knew, berated her for being upset. To make matters worse, he had very niche fetishes that were all too public in a small town. He would go out in very revealing drag outfits, and this led to my sister getting bullied for years. He also chose to be featured in adult films of fetishes worse than this, that he conveniently left out in the open for my mother to find. He had tried to get me into his fetishes multiple times. When the marriage was finally ending, he came to me in tears asking me not to cut him out and that it was all a misunderstanding. I've since made it very clear he is not welcome in my life whatsoever. He obviously did not take this well, and even had the audacity to be upset I didn't inform him of or invite him to my own wedding. He has completely ruined myself and my relatives' emotional health. My mother and sister both are diagnosed with PTSD and have been working to heal themselves. Someday I hope I have the strength to go myself. You have demonstrated to the world that you're tough as shit. Seeking help is well within your abilities. You survived all of that above. You can do this too. Hugs. Oh god, where to start? Well, my mother's always hated me. Still no idea why. I have an older brother, FTM trans, that she's always adored. He has a shit ton of mental health issues, the least of which are anxiety, depression. Personally, I think he has some sort of schizophrenia too. So he's the golden child. Mum hates me. I started cooking for myself when I was 3, recently confirmed by an aunt. Like deep fryer, stovetop cooking. I always had to make my own lunch, get myself to school, no buses, had to walk, and didn't own a pair of shoes till I was at least 7. My brother had everything handed to him. I was never beaten. But that's cause they really didn't care enough. My father was there physically. Mentally he was glued to his computers. We would have to yell his name multiple times before he told us to duck off for disturbing him. The house was always a pigsty. Neither of them worked, and money was always tight, but mostly cause mum was buying fried chicken every day for lunch. When I was 8 or so, my dad started paying attention to me because mum hated us both. When I was 12, he thought I was old enough to consent to sexual relations. That continued till I was 16, and I was kicked out. Mum just hated me more and more. She blames me for stealing her husband, and my brother has jumped on the bandwagon and accused my father of a lot of shit he would never do. Call me crazy, but there's a huge leap between mistaken consent, yes it's still rape, and genital mutilation. My father got arrested when I was 18 and my brother tried to stab me a few months later. Mum stood back and let him. I haven't spoken to any of them since. I'm 24 now. I have 2 kids, and I'm happily married to a psychology student. Of all things, I still haven't figured out what to do with my life, and I still have a lot of CPTSD, anxiety, depression, and have recently figured out I'm autistic too. But I've never regretted cutting contact. To this day my brother and mother still blame me for everything wrong in their lives. Still post it on social media. All I know is I refuse to be just a victim. That's all they know how to do, and I pity them. I'm not angry anymore. Just very sad. Sounds like you've done an awesome job of moving forward with your life. I hope your life continues to get better. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.